All right, Des, welcome to Bitcoin Builders. How are you doing?
I am awesome. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
No, I'm so excited. You are an archetypal Bitcoin builder. You're one of the people that I had in mind when I was thinking about doing this show and why I wanted to take this kind of take on exploring Bitcoin. So I've been watching from afar for a while. But for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the space. Because obviously Thunder is not your first Bitcoin rodeo.
No, it is not. So I've been in Bitcoin for quite some time, which is, I don't know, it feels like it's gone by so fast. But I got into Bitcoin in grad school, got interested in it, kind of just followed along passively, active on Twitter. And then after a while, I actually started working at Lightning Labs. So I was at Lightning Labs for almost 4 years, and I was VP of business operations there, and had an amazing time. Loved building, great team. And, when I was there, we were always thinking a lot about like, okay, how do we bring Bitcoin to the world? Like, how do we grow the Lightning Network? And we thought a lot about like, okay, well, use cases are the best way to onboard people to Bitcoin. If there's some other use other than just like, hey, you're just purchasing it. So gaming was really the use case that I found not only to just be like the most interesting, but I think also to be like some of the most powerful. What are the most powerful use cases? So I am selfishly I've grown up gaming, since I was very little with my dad, still do today. So it was a little bit selfish, but also, games are a really great way to kind of usher in new technologies, new content. And so I found that to be like kind of the perfect vehicle for introducing people to Bitcoin. So my co-founder, Jack Everett, he actually started Thunder in terms of he was hacking around after the Lightning conference, or might have been before, adding Bitcoin to games. And, with the advent of the Lightning Network, it really made adding Bitcoin to games possible just because of the cheap, fast nature of the payments on the Lightning Network. So, I'd taken some time off, and he asked me to kind of come on board for this crazy ride. And we've been building Thunder ever since. And it's really kind of cool because we're really kind of living on that mission of like bringing Bitcoin to the world through play. So 80% of our users are totally new to Bitcoin. This is their first exposure. We have tons of moms, grandmas. We have, people of all ages, all demographics, all over the world who this is the first time that they're ever being introduced to Bitcoin. It's very fun, safe, familiar. Everyone's played a mobile game before. So we're really kind of using these mobile games as the vehicle for introducing Bitcoin to the world. And then there's another part of it on the other end where adding Bitcoin to games makes sense for games developers, and it really kind of adds a new layer to gaming. But we can get into that separately. But yeah, that's kind of a very short overview of what I've been working on in the Bitcoin space for 6 some years.
Amazing. No, I was so excited to dig into all this with you. Like I said, I want to go back even kind of farther to, you started with Lightning Labs in 2018 or around then?
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is coming just after the ICO boom, right? Which is, the ICO boom for a lot of people was what brought them into the crypto space. Even if they didn't stick around for, they didn't go full kind of ICO with it. It was just when naturally a lot of people started to notice it because all their friends were talking about it, and some of their friend had just turned some magic internet money into much more money. But, how had you been paying attention during that time? Before Lightning, what were you kind of watching it, and how, it was kind of iconoclastic a little bit, or contrarian, to move into Bitcoin in 2018 as compared to, maybe one of these other sort of tokenize the world projects. But, how did you think about that? What was it like at the time? Because I think we have a very different perception of where Lightning is now compared to where it was in 2018.
Yeah, that's super funny. That you kind of mentioned like the progress of Lightning, but So, I actually first got into Bitcoin from Dogecoin. So, when I was in grad school, I was on Reddit a lot. And so I stumbled on the Dogecoin subreddit and, just kind of fell in love with the community and the fun and, just kind of the lightheartedness of it all. So, I'm, happy to admit that I've come to Bitcoin through some shitcoinery. And, but I always really kind of just viewed it as that, as like, this is like fun and very community based. But then, I started really seeing kind of the power of Bitcoin. I mean, I was in consulting after grad school and doing a lot of work with the federal government, became like very disenchanted with the whole system and really kind of saw Bitcoin as like a hope for freedom and becoming self-sovereign. So that's how I got interested in Bitcoin. But the ICO, yeah, I think, and this is, sad to admit, but I think during the ICO boom, like I just really don't trust things that aren't like very simple and easy to understand. Because I feel like a lot of the time, some of the like most powerful technologies, some of the most powerful systems are some of the most easy to understand. And if I was going to start like spending time investing money in an asset that was risky, then I should probably really understand what I was getting into. Otherwise, I should just like do normal investing. So that was really kind of sparked my interest in Bitcoin. The white paper is like 10 pages long. It's super easy. You can read it a couple times and really, really grok what's going on with it. So with a lot of these ICO the ICO, yeah, the ICOs and tokens back in the day, it was just like, I mean, I truly couldn't really understand them. Maybe because like it was all just like madness behind the scenes, and there wasn't really anything like tied it all together. So that kind of helped me like stay away from some of them. But like, I of course like had like bought into it a little bit, like ETH, and sold it eventually. Like I have a crypto kitty still. I won't sell that just for
The
for
history,
shits
man.
and giggles. But
Yeah.
what'd you say?
I said for the history. So like
Yeah, exactly.
it's a very iconic piece of crypto history. Nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that's like one of the real like the that's the beauty of Bitcoin. And like, we get asked that like all the time. Why don't you like do something on Solana or this or that? And it's like, well, there's lots of reasons, but one of them is like Bitcoin, the fundamentals are there. Like it's a very strong foundation to build on. And it's something very easy to understand. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole
No,
ICO boom.
I think it makes a ton of sense. And it also like it makes sense. I'm excited to come back to this idea of starting with this community and fun and lightheartedness, because it feels to me like a little bit of that is coming back to Bitcoin, to the extent that it ever left, which is exciting. But okay, so you're building on Lightning Labs, or you go join Lightning Labs. Obviously, over the course of the next few years, um, what we can do technologically from Lightning and where it is, as well as just sort of where Bitcoin is in culture and society, changes pretty dramatically. What was the point at which had you started to look around for your next adventure when you ran into Jack, and what was the beginning of Thunder? I guess how much did you know that you wanted to go build something in Bitcoin versus it just being this sort of alignment where you had an interest in gaming, you had loved games, and it was this thing that kind of combined that with this mission orientation towards Bitcoin?
Yeah, so really it was, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a mixture of the two. I had met Jack actually in VR, in virtual reality, and him, myself, and the guys from Zebedee started this like community driven project during the pandemic called Mint Gox. And it was really just like a weekly event where, we all went on, like played everybody's games, really supported it, just tried to bring a lot of visibility to the space. So I kind of, I was at Lightning Labs and I was doing that as a way to like really kind of foster this use case and foster and grow that as like a little baby industry almost. And so I was always really kind of interested in like actively working to grow this space. But like on the builder front, like, yeah, I mean, I always wanted to build something of my own and be involved with something. And I think you get a lot of that being in any role at an early startup. So,
Totally.
I always kind of considered myself a builder. It was a little bit harder in an infrastructure company because I couldn't be like super in the weeds. But now it's like, yeah, I feel like it's a very natural kind of fit for me. And yeah, there was some alignment, but like I really did want to work on something that like I could really, really grow and have it be somewhat of my own. So that was like definitely a big part of the next step. And then just being around builders, like working at Lightning Labs, obviously very like ingrained with the community and always talking to builders who are like using L&D and using the tools at Lightning Labs. Like I was so inspired and I loved the people who were building, so it was kind of me living out that that dream of like actually getting to do what everybody else was doing and I was witnessing. So it was a very natural next step.
Amazing. So with Thunder, let's talk a little bit about kind of what the model is, what the games are, what the game experience is, and just how Bitcoin fits into it.
Yeah, so we really kind of consider Thunder Games to be more of like a mobile gaming platform, and that's like more conceptual because it's hard for people to imagine that when you don't have like a console or some
Okay.
type of gaming system. But we really are like the one-stop shop for Bitcoin games. And so we have 6 games in the App Store and Google Play. And what really kind of makes it unique is that every single game has a similar experience in terms of like the cash outflow. There's like every game is thunderized. So there's a panel that in the games that you has all of your winnings, your ID, and that is persistent across all of the games. So you have that very unified user experience where you can see your rewards, your leaderboards, your stats, all of your cash outs, your wallets, that all sits in every single game and it looks the same across the entire portfolio. So that's what we've kind of been really building out. And yeah, it's been going great. We're eventually moving to like establish more content on the platform through publishing. We've been chatting with several folks about publishing their games on our platform, which we're super excited about. But this year is really all about kind of like leveling up that foundation that we've already built. So we're focusing on like the social competitive nature of it. So we've launched leagues this year. We have a few other launches coming out in the next couple months that I think will really be interesting and add to the idea that, people are coming here to be social. They're coming here to like transact and interact with each other. And they're coming to compete. So we have a very, very competitive community. So super excited about that. That's kind of our thesis is like people want to come, they want to win. And then what do they want to do next? They want to compete with each other. And so we have some really fun announcements this year, but we're really kind of just getting started. Yeah, that's like kind of a very high level overview.
Super. So this sounds sort of weird, but just let me see if it resonates. It almost feels to me like Bitcoin functions as a gamification layer on top of the game. So you have these sort of like very iconic style mobile games, like things that like experiences that people will have had some similar type of game experience before. They're really like iconic things that, people have loved. And I mean, there's even like a Snake version, which, I think every kid who had a calculator and like the old school Nokia brick phones, like, loved. Is that sort of, I mean, and then what you just added is almost like the social layer. So is that kind of how you think about it? Like the titles have to be, or the games themselves have to be just fun on their own terms, and then everything that you build around them, the way that you thunderize them, to use your word, kind of sits as this thing that keeps people even more engaged and gives them even more value and fun.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that we have the rewards structured in the games is through a raffle system, which that's just very much like a normal mobile gaming industry tactic. It is very easy to just like add, like, hey, you pick up 1 point in the game, you get 1 sat. It's very easy to do that, but you kind of lose out on some of like the gamifying or like the influencing of user behavior. So we've added the Bitcoin to like this raffle system, which people get really, really excited about. So we've done that. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like Bitcoin, and this is kind of like an ethos at the company, is like Bitcoin is not going to save a good or a bad game. Like it's never going to like improve your game, unfortunately. It's a great way to increase monetization. It's a great tool for developers, but like it's not going to save a fundamentally bad game. And we say that because like it really doesn't make like the kind of unit economics, like it doesn't make sense to just like be giving away crazy rewards in these games. And it's also very easy, or not, it is very easy for people to cheat and, be completely fraudulent when playing these games. Like you see this with like Axie Infinity. Like when there is real money involved, like people will cheat. So we did spend 3 months like building really amazing anti-cheat, anti-fraud tools. So, you can't just rely on these tools like, hey, I'm going to plug in and play this, and like I'm going to start like having all these users, people are going to love my games. Like you really fundamentally need to start with like that. You need to start with like, this is a good game and it's a good game first. And I think this is where like there's a really big branch off between what we're doing and like the Web3 like play to earn world, because like that's all about earning. The games don't have to be fun. Like it's not about the game, it's about earning, which in my mind becomes a job. And I'm not in the business of employing more people. We really focus on that these are actually games, and first and foremost, the pure joy of play needs to be there. And I think that's what play to earn and Web3 games really lack. And we just have like really great games, and the Bitcoin is kind of the icing on the top. And again, it's a great way to it's a great extra tool for developers to add to their games, because people are like, long-term retention is insane when you start adding these micro incentives to these games. So if your long-term retention is greater, your LTV is greater, your users are interacting with more ads, they're buying more things in the game, they're more loyal, so you're able to monetize them more. And then there's that increased revenue, so you're able to like share some of that revenue back to your users to get those results. So that's kind of how we think about the games. Like first, like if people would play the solitaire game if we took the Bitcoin out, but I don't think that they would play as much as they're playing.
Right.
Like people on average are playing like 38 minutes per user per day. That's like mind-blowing for a mobile game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, I've seen some friends of mine in Bitcoin who are playing on average 2 hours a day. So, I think the Bitcoin piece is really important, but it's not going to save a bad game.
So this is super. I mean, I think that this makes a ton of sense to basically, on a very kind of basic level, a difference between your model and the play to earn model is Bitcoin is really used as a retention and sort of a way for people to sort of extend their interactions with the game, versus it being the sort of the fundamental architecture of the experience itself is trying to use game mechanics to go earn something. What do you see in terms of, or I guess, yeah, so how are people finding these games? Are they walking through the door of Bitcoin? Are they just finding it because their friends are playing? Are they finding it because they were looking for a solitaire game and they might as well try the Bitcoin one? Kind of what are you seeing with that?
So right now, everything is totally organic. We haven't done any paid user acquisition, which is really kind of the name of growth in the mobile games industry. And so everything's been organic so far. And people are just, whether it's like referrals, we're seeing a lot of people just stumble on the games organically in the App Store. Our retention, it's like a game. Like I had no idea how like mobile advertising worked in the App Store and Google Play, but now I'm quickly becoming hopefully an expert soon. But we have like amazing user ratings. Our retention is great. And so the App Store and Google Play tend to like show our games, more often than, if those things were bad. So people are, searching for solitaire or, real money rewards type games. There's tons of games that you can win, like fiat, you can win other types of rewards. And so they're seeing our game and they're like, oh, like I might as well just try this. And, I don't have any experience with Bitcoin. Like, let me just try this. Now, there's a huge hurdle because most games that have Bitcoin rewards or even real money rewards, they are scams, unfortunately. And even if they're not a scam, there's cash out thresholds. So you might have to like win $20 before you're able to cash out to PayPal or something. And that's incredibly difficult to meet that threshold in most games. So there's not a lot of trust. So we do struggle a lot with that. But, it's really just like kind of all organic. And then obviously the Bitcoin community is incredibly supportive. So like I can typically see in our charts, like where the Bitcoin community, like where those peaks come from. So that's like kind of our exposure so far. We have had a bit of luck with Google recently. Google and Apple really, really kind of suppress the term Bitcoin or anything related to crypto. So we've been blocked for a very long time with Google ads. So we weren't able to do a lot of paid user acquisition. And now, we have like really good relationship with them now. So we're hoping that we can kind of like really start reaching out to like wider audiences that have, no exposure to Bitcoin whatsoever, or greater audiences that are new, and onboarding them. So it's just like kind of an uphill battle. So it's not just only keeping our apps in the App Store and Google Play, which is a huge fight, which I'm sure you've seen with like Damus and like a lot of these, other Bitcoin apps. There's like even more struggle because like you need exposure in the App Store and Google Play to find, these totally new users to Bitcoin. So it's reach is like very much of a struggle that I think like everybody in Bitcoin really struggles with.
So I was going to ask to what the benefit of using Bitcoin over fiat for rewards is, but you kind of just touched on one of them, which is just sort of the ability to move and cash out at much smaller levels. I mean, is that primary? Like, and again, obviously we're coming both from the perspective of having a Bitcoin mission orientation, but I'm kind of speaking, holding that aside, just, why someone who is interested in this type of mechanic who didn't even have that orientation might be interested in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I get this question a lot, like why Bitcoin? I mean, well, why not why Bitcoin over fiat? That's like very, straightforward. It's like we can send payments instantly. We can cash out to one Satoshi, which like that's insane. We have users who cash out one sat all of the time. So that like really reduces the friction. Like our payment success rate is like over 99.9%. It's like insanely successful. So it's really kind of Bitcoin is like via the Lightning Network specifically has really reduced the friction of, just the payments piece, which I think is like enough in and of itself. But there's like a lot of things that like there's a lot of things that like micro payments like really kind of opens up. So if you think a lot about just creating an app, specifically a mobile game, the idea of like these like mini dopamine hits, right? Like that's very hard to do with any fiat system, right? You can't be like, okay, we're sending a thousandth of a cent like nonstop to these users, and that's creating this like dopamine, and therefore you can really influence these behavior patterns. So that's not possible with fiat, which is really awesome. So we can really kind of unlock influence on user behavior because of these, this very, very small denomination of Bitcoin, i.e. sats. So that's like really, really just two really interesting things that Bitcoin offers that fiat doesn't. But we do get asked a lot, like, okay, why aren't you using Solana or, any of these other kind of blockchains? And, I do say like, and I only say this because I know deep in my soul that Bitcoin is the best. I'm running a business, right? Like I'm not, at the end of the day, like I have people, that I'm beholden to, investors, shareholders. So I, always say like, hey, if something better comes out, we'll switch, right? We will switch. But there really is, like Michael Saylor says, there really is no second best. And I think you can see that if you go into these other Web3 gaming communities where people are so mad that like a payment failed or like all of a sudden like all of their money was gone in their wallet. And, that's just comes at the risk of like most of those projects are centralized. They're very insecure. They're very new. They're also like based on, a inherently inflationary asset. You just look at Axie Infinity's love potion. So, I know deep down that like Bitcoin will always be the best, but like I can very strongly say like this is the best technology for the business. And I don't actually ever need to make a, decision where like, hey, we're doing Bitcoin for the sake of Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is actually so great that we can just say we're using the best technology that's on the market, which I think is really powerful and says something about Bitcoin. Like it's not actually just a gimmick, where I think in a lot of these other projects, these, tokens and these other Web3 games, like a lot of what they're doing, the decentralization is just a gimmick.
It's super interesting. The payment success rate is something that I hadn't even thought of, but I imagine is hugely, hugely impactful to whether people have a good experience with the game and whether they're willing to come back and play again.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't get their money immediately, you've lost a user. And I think that's something interesting that I'm not sure. I don't think a lot of other big projects in Bitcoin, besides some of the wallets, I don't think they have a lot of exposure to normal people. I mean, most Bitcoin wallets, you have an inherently Bitcoin-centric user base, right? Like people who are coming to our games are just normal people. And so it is like we only have one shot to make this right and make this work for them. Because the minute the payment doesn't go through or they have a bad experience, you will find out in the App Store with a 1-star review and someone like literally raging, and they will never come back. And that is horrible, right? And you think about the positive reviews, like, and like the positive experiences, people tell their friends, like people on board. We have a ton of people using our referral program, but like I don't think we realize as a community how finicky the normal user is. And I think that's something we like at Thunder we're like constantly thinking about, and it's really an uphill battle. But I think collectively as Bitcoiners, like that's something we have to like very, very strongly think about.
So this is going to be my other question. I imagine that you have a fairly global distribution of users. Presumably Bitcoin as a sort of non-territorial, non-sovereign asset matters too, from the standpoint of fiat. Like it just wouldn't be possible to, cash out people in 200 different countries or however many you're dealing with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much available anywhere that we can be in the App Store and Google Play. We're available. So pretty much everywhere. There's only a few countries that like they ban Bitcoin very strongly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if we are totally non-custodial, so and we're also like wallet agnostic, so you can cash out to any wallet that you want. And that makes it possible for us to be everywhere. If we were doing anything custodial, like we could not, have our apps in New York, right? There's just so many restrictions. So, the nature of Bitcoin makes it super possible. And I'm not sure like what the restrictions are on other blockchains in the App Store, or custodially. I don't really know how they work, but there's only a few countries that we can't bring our games to, and the ones that we don't, we just tell people just use a VPN. I know that's bad, but
so I guess actually you just reminded me of another question too, which is, so you said 80% of people who are playing these games have never interacted with Bitcoin before. This is their first interaction with Bitcoin. How do you help them go about, creating a wallet or figuring out how to do that? Like, is there a hand-holding process that you guys have to do?
So, I mean, we could do so much better. And, this is on the roadmap to do like more education and whatnot. But it is like I think the skeleton is right. Because, people, when they play a game or like, when they even just have money in a wallet, like even like Venmo, they understand the cash outflow. So I will say our UX is like really, really good, to the point where a lot of people copy it, which I take as a compliment. But our UX is really good. So people understand the flow of like, hey, now it told me I had a reward, so now I have to cash out. So in the cash out screen, there's like a list of wallets, and it will just say like, okay, hey, you have to download a wallet. And then we give a list of recommended wallets. It's super long. And, people can just click it and then they have to go and download it. So it is like, we could do a little bit more where it's like, hey, this is a Bitcoin wallet. Here's what you have to do. But also the cash outflow is super simple. So if you just go download wallet of Satoshi, come back to the game and press claim, it goes straight there. And then every other time that you win a prize, you click claim and it goes straight to the wallet. So I think the good UX really helps a lot, because it's
heavy lifting. Yeah.
Yeah, it just very much mirrors the flow in every really great wallet, or really great other type of product with a similar flow. But we could definitely do way more on kind of the education piece. But as soon as people get into the community, like if they're on our Discord, which we have like 25,000 people on our Discord, which isn't a ton, but like when people get there, there's a lot of education that happens there. We have some great community mods, and there's a lot of information that is shared and hand-holding there, but we could definitely be better on the education front.
You're not running a startup if you don't sort of look at different areas and think, oh, we could be doing so much better. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. What do you think are the big opportunities for you guys specifically, but just sort of gaming in and around Bitcoin in general right now?
I think so the way it's really hard to say. I mean, there's so many things. What we're kind of doing now, and I know this like probably pisses off a lot of like hardcore Bitcoiners, even though I feel like I'm a hardcore Bitcoiner at this point, is really kind of embracing these labels that other people put on you. So we get put into like Web3 stuff all the time, which drives me nuts. Like, we are not Web3. I hate all of that. Like, I hate blockchain gaming. I hate it all. But what, we used to just like say no to like every time. I was like, hey, come speak at this thing. Hey, join this. And we used to say no. But then I realized, wait, shit. Like, I spoke at the MIT gaming conference a couple weeks ago, which was an amazing event, by the way. But they put me on a Web3 panel. And at first I was like, oh, no. But then I went and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my chance to convert the Web3 people to become Bitcoiners. And I think that is where I think there's a ton of opportunity just for people who are kind of building in this game space, is like, embrace these labels. Like, don't become that, but like, it's a really interesting way to find new users, because these Web3 users, they get burnt and they get pissed, but they want somewhere else to go. They still want to earn some type of cryptocurrency. So we're actually seeing a lot of converts in our community who used to like play Axie and used to play, Step In and all these games. And they're now finding our games and they're like, oh, like there's nothing fishy here. And then they become like very, very loyal users. So I think like that's a huge, huge opportunity. A huge opportunity that like nobody has been really exploiting. I think Zebedee does a good job of it as well. But I think like collectively, we need to just do that. I know it sucks, but that's
Well, especially it's the right moment too, because I mean, so one of the things that I think is interesting is, so if someone came to this podcast, right, just this podcast is the only thing that they'd ever heard about Thunder or interacted with, uh, even just the discussion of what we were just talking about before of, payment success rates and how that fits, and the comparative difficulty because of other scams in the store, and how the long-term brand of Bitcoin is, even if anything in crypto is a challenge, at least you have Bitcoin, and that's sort of very different than random new token X. Like, those are compelling reasons to at least explore the space. And presumably people who have had not so great experiences with other gaming experiences that don't have some of those things might even be sort of the like most likely to kind of recommend this once they see it actually works, because they were, they're already interested in this type of experience, and then it sort of goes well and how they expected versus how it goes poorly. I think there's a lot of room to convert there. And I guess the other piece is it kind of reminds me a little bit of what's happening with ordinals right now, where I don't think that it's sort of like a strict divide where if people like ordinals, they have to hate NFTs on other blockchains or anything like that. However, I do think that people who are coming from other blockchains or even Bitcoiners getting involved do like some of the aspects that make ordinals different in terms of it actually being written to that blockchain versus being sort of, an approximation of an ownership token somewhere else that could be removed. You know what I mean? Like, there's these sort of distinct pieces of, the Bitcoinness of it that become part of the sale and sort of pull people over. But I mean, I guess if you've been watching, you talked a little bit about sort of the fun in Bitcoin and bringing Bitcoin to the world through play. How have you kind of seen the ordinals movement? Is that, is it interesting to you? Is it sort of just a distraction? What's your take?
Well, I mean, one, I just love the drama. I just love watching the drama. It's like reality television to me. It's like I don't need to like watch TLC or, E. I just can get on Bitcoin Twitter to see people fighting, which 100% love. But I just, for us, I think it's great to see anything being experimented with in the community. I mean, I can see why people are upset. For me, I think that there is, some aspect that it is healthy. I think it will take some time to like shake out. It's going to feel weird when like very, very like people who are diametrically opposed to like the ethos of Bitcoin are coming to our community, and like it feels like they're infiltrating a bit. But if it is a way, in my view, it's like if it is a way to like bring this to more people, I don't see why not, right? And you can't say what people can do on Bitcoin or what people can't do on Bitcoin. So I think it's really healthy. I mean, for us, I would love to experiment with ordinals just for the sake of experimenting. Like we've been doing a lot of experimentation with Nostr, but we don't, our users don't want like really, they don't want to mint anything quite yet. And so maybe it's just not for our users, but I think I mean, I like to see the experimentation, and it's just going to be super uncomfortable. But we do have to realize again, like there's other people out there that they don't actually care. I know it's crazy, but like they don't care about sound money, and they don't care about what we as Bitcoiners love about Bitcoin. They are interested in other things, which gasp, there's other people out there. And so there are people who like collecting shit. I know that's crazy for people to believe, but like they like collecting things. And I think it would be really healthy for Bitcoiners or people building in this space to like just look at like gaming user profiles. There's people who care so much about competition. There's people who care about collecting. There's people who care about reputation. There's people who care about personalization. There's like, there's different kind of formats, but there's like usually like 6 to 8 different gaming user types. And I think it'd be really healthy for everyone to take a look at that, because like you will realize that there's people out there not like you. And if we want people not like us using this technology so Bitcoin can kind of be ubiquitous in the future, we have to let these people in, whether we like it or not. How it gets done, people are debating that. But again, like, I think it's very, very healthy, whether I agree with it personally or not. I like to see people pushing the boundaries, and even if we don't like people who are joining, like, we have to accept them. It's like what Bitcoin is about. I know that's scary for people.
Do you have a feeling that, so one of the things that I often think when people are not receptive to those new types of people coming out is it almost, to me, can suggest a lack of confidence in Bitcoin that people would deny to the nines, but it's sort of like, if this thing is so fragile that it can't, it can't handle a bunch of new perspectives coming in, there's a certain amount of sure, like, the defense, the Bitcoin defense system or whatever. But I feel like it's, I don't know, to be nervous about something like this is just kind of conveys a lack of confidence in Bitcoin a little bit to me.
I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think that's what it is? Like, I think that people are just using that as an excuse for, like, their discomfort with new people coming in and, like, new things being built on Bitcoin that they're uncomfortable with. Like, I mean, maybe it is. Like, I don't know. I just think it's just so crazy that, one of the things that I love about Bitcoin is that it's so strong and, like, it's so secure, and, like, these type of things can be built to stress test the system. So it seems weird. I feel like that might just be an excuse when, like, deep down, like, they're actually, like, trying to struggle and work through, like, other problems. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's like a total cop out. But
yeah. Who knows? It's interesting. I think the debates are important, right? Like, I think that the debates around, you're joking about it being sort of fun TV, which I agree with, but the debates around ordinals are super healthy, it feels like to me, because it's like, I think that on the one hand, the position that things that bring new energy to Bitcoin are good for Bitcoin is super compelling. On the other hand, I think it's reasonable for people to zoom out 1,000,000 degrees and ask, are there unintended consequences of using it in this way that's very different than its monetary application? Like, those are really healthy debates, at least when you get beyond they're bad or they're good, like the very kind of superficial thing. So, I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic that even in the chaos, good comes out of it on the other side.
Yeah, I would be very concerned if there were no debates, right? And like I said, like, I like to see what's happening. I like to see the stress testing. I like to see the experimentation. Like, I'm not sold on anything yet, personally, but, like, I would be very worried if there was not a huge debate, right? Like, that is exactly, like, kind of the community social aspect of Bitcoin I think we always will need. Otherwise, we'll just, like, be like some of these other communities who just, like, hop on, change things, at a whim, and then, like, things get destroyed. So I think the debates, I think the arguments are super healthy. If it wouldn't be Bitcoin if we didn't have it. And I think it's great that there can be so many different views on one topic, and, like, they all get very, very, like, they all get taken into consideration. And I think this is, also makes Bitcoin very slow. Like, we see with, like, any new updates to Bitcoin, it can be very slow, but, like, honestly, it's 100% a feature and not a bug. And I think we just have to, like, get comfortable with this being the process and, like, this being the pushback for every new idea. I think that's just, like, the social aspect that has been beautifully built into Bitcoin.
Between 2018, when you started with Lightning, 2021, I think, when you started with Thunder, and now in 2023, how different is the feeling or the vibe of people building in and around Bitcoin? How dramatically has it changed?
I mean, it's crazy. It's insane. It has not been that long, and it's so much growth. Like, I mean, I remember being at Lightning Labs, and, like, payments would still, like, not route through the network, like, reliably, right? It was still so early. Like, I can't even remember what the max payment, like the max amount of payment you could send in one transaction, but it was like capped very, very low. And it was still just like this idea of being reckless, and there wasn't really anything. There was some stuff being built, but there were like not a lot of companies in the space. Like everyone was super small. And then I mean, I remember sometimes being like very, very early when I first started, where I was like, oh my God, like I've just like quit my like high paying management consulting job to work at this startup. And is this a good move? Like, is this thing actually going to work? And being super afraid. But then, obviously like I trusted, and, I knew what we were building was like really powerful. But today to see like nation state adoption for Bitcoin, and like, you see these companies raising, tens of millions of dollars. I'm like, I can't believe it. Like, when I say like 99.9% success rate for our payments, like what? I think like one of the least hard things that we do at Thunder is like managing our Lightning infrastructure. That's crazy to me. Like we don't even use like more than like 2% of Jack's time on like maintaining our Lightning node and like our balances and payments. It's so seamless at this point. And I remember thinking back when I was at Lightning Labs, like, oh, if someone's going to run Lightning infrastructure on their own, it's going to take like 1.5 FTE. And now it's like a fraction of Jack. And that's crazy to me. So it's not like, okay, there's more builders in the space, more use cases. People are, playing around with like WAV Lake, the stuff that I don't even know if that's how you say it, but the stuff they're doing like with music and streaming, like Fountain, these podcasting apps. Like, I think that's crazy to see the businesses and the use cases, but then just like the fact that you can use Lightning so easily, like, you're thinking like, obviously, like voltage makes things so easy, Amboss, Lightning Labs, like they all have these tools that make running a business on Lightning really, really easy. So it's that. And then there's also just like the infrastructure piece, the fact that like this thing actually works at a high capacity is wild. And that's just like a few years. So I can't imagine where we'll be in like 5 more years. It's kind of scary what could be possible.
The combination of more and better infrastructure, more and more aligned capital, and just more examples of people like putting their entrepreneurial energy into the Bitcoin space, I think is a very powerful, positive feedback loop in terms of, begetting more creation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know like it probably to like an outsider seems like it's all happening so slow, because these other communities will be like, oh, hey, I've built like, it's been 2 weeks since this blockchain launch, and I've like built this like whole trading thing. It's like DeFi things, and you're just like, yeah, it's slow for a reason, because everything is like, the foundation is really, really strong. And I think it's not just like, oh, hey, these things are being built in isolation. Like the things being built in Lightning and Bitcoin are very, very interrelated. Like we do a lot of like collaborations with like wallets, so like Pouch and Osmo and all of these wallets. And so like all of the companies in this space are very, very close and like growing together. And I think that's like something that's very, very different. Like even I see companies that are directly competing with each other work together. And so I think that's something really unique to this space as well.
What are you most excited for the rest of this year for Thunder and for Bitcoin more broadly?
Oh man, for Thunder, there's just like this social competitive features that we're announcing and are rolling out this year are just like next level. So I'm very excited to share those soon. And I guess also for Thunder is just like the growth that I really hope we see in terms of like the user base this year. I think once we can start like getting past some of these hurdles with the App Store and Google Play, we'll be seeing a ton more people kind of being ushered into Bitcoin. Like I consider us the top of the funnel. Like this is the first exposure, and then we can introduce people to wallets, to different services, different things you can do with Bitcoin. And so, I really view our growth as a way for the entire space to grow because we are kind of that first touch point. So that's what I'm really excited about for Thunder. And then just this space in general. I'm just excited for the experimentation. I think during the pandemic, there was like it was like kind of stagnant. Before, like around the Lightning conference, I saw so much growth, so many more people building. And I feel like this year we've again started seeing people build a little bit more. And there's like a lot of really cool projects like Lyle Pratt's project. I remember what it's called now. Vita, like projects like that. There's even like a bunch of cool new people hacking around with Lightning Gaming. So I think like the new experimentation, the new building, and then just experimentation with like ordinals and like this BRC20, which I literally only read one Twitter thread on, so I don't have any opinion. I don't know anything about it, but I just think it's cool to see people trying new things, whether they're good or bad. So I'm very excited for the experimentation and then hopefully a bull market at some point. So that would help.
Well, that's awesome to have you on the show. I'm really excited to have you guys here building. I can't wait to see how things go. I'm sure that they're, keep building great games and then, get a little bit of that juice from a bull market and we'll be off to the races, right?
Yeah, that's the hope. So, awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being here and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.